Hey, it's Chuck today. Do you have a time frame of when you're going to name a starting quarterback?
I mean, it's going to be a huge part of our season. Is the quarterback playing, how well the quarterback plays. I mean, we know that. We know how important the offensive line play is going to be.
Offensive line.
We know how important the quarterback play is going to be. We're not shying away from that. And typically, the defense is going to be strong, and how well they play late in the season is going to be critical. But
not the offensive line, not the defense late in the season. A time frame for naming the starting quarterback.
So that's a big part of it. In terms of a deadline,
no, not a deadline, not a deadline. Two vastly different things.
And I don't like to do that. Because this is something where a lot of those guys are working towards it, and I want to make sure that, we're doing what's right by them.
How's it not doing right by them to name a time frame of when we're going to choose the starting quarterback?
But at the same time, do right by the team to make sure that we're prepared.
Again, bud, we're just looking for a time frame of when you're going to make that decision.
And I think, the way that things turned out last year, it kind of went into the first couple games of the season. That's not ideal. Mm-hmm.
No, it wouldn't be ideal if that's what actually happened, but that's not really what happened. You told us that's what was going to happen, but you really only played the one guy.
I wouldn't like to do that again this year.
I should hope not.
But it's going to come down to playing the best players, and I say that all the time. Like, we don't have time to not play the best players, so they'll be in competitive situations, and may the best man win.
Indeed, but when is it that you're going to tell that best man when he won?
And typically, the defense.
Let's get it.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
That means we've got. And welcome in. Thank you so much for joining me on the weekend show. Appreciate you guys so much, and I apologize I did not get to a live show today that I had intended to. I've been going hard for the last 3.5 months since I started this show because I feel like, man, I was so scared to do it, and if I was going to do it, I was going to give it my all so that I didn't embarrass myself. So I did that. I've been doing that, and being that it's just a hobby, I've been neglecting some things like my family a little bit. They're getting quite irritated with me now at this point. So we're going to need to back it up just a little bit. Still planning on doing 3 shows a week. We're not going to be trying to ram out 5 a week like I was doing before. I get a little compulsive with things that I get into. And I need to do a little bit of perspective and kind of just ease up a little bit. So we're going to do that. Still going to bring 3 of the highest quality shows I can bring a week, which really will probably work out better. I noticed when I was doing 5 a week, I was kind of stretching for things to talk about. With 3, I don't need to do that. I can, find the best of the best to talk about. So it is late Saturday. It's not even Saturday night anymore. It's Sunday morning. And I want to make sure that I bring you a Sunday show because I do love the weekend show. But I did notice that, so what I do is I kind of log notes all week long about things I want to talk about. And then I sit down before the show and do some show notes. Once in a while, I notice that I've got a theme to the show that was unintentional. Today, I think I might have had a bit of a grumpy week because there's a couple things that I don't know, maybe a couple grumpy takes here. However, we got some pretty good news as Decorian Moore decommitted to LSU from LSU. Decorian Moore, number 1 wide receiver in the country, and he was committed to LSU, but still flirting openly with Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. So LSU, he is scratching them off the list and has announced his visits, and these are the only ones he's taking. He's not opening the recruitment up. It's Ohio State, it's Texas, and it's Oregon. And a lot of people were quite concerned immediately that Texas had flipped him. Sark got him. He was going to Texas to play with Arch, his big package, NIL package, and that's what was going down. And then immediately a couple Texas guys came out with crystal balls for him to Texas. Well, those guys that crystal balled him are the same guys that crystal balled Jordan Davison prematurely to Texas, who have since rescinded those crystal balls. And I don't think that that's what's going on here. I think Oregon is still heavily in play. I think Ohio State is still heavily in play. And I don't even think Texas is ahead of Oregon or Ohio State at this point. I think what happened with him coming up to Ohio State twice in 5 weeks, the second time with his mom, and his mom saying, I had to come up to see what it was he loved so much. And remember, that wasn't some long drawn out thing that then he came up to Ohio State and then they came up again. That was a quick thing, Heartline's in on him, and then boom, he comes up, and then boom, they come up again. When you see that kind of momentum, you know that the guy's really intrigued. Add that into the fact that the Jamie French situation seems to be going wonky here. By the way, an update on that. Tom Loy from 24/7 said that now French is talking about committing before the season starts. Well, he has 4 officials scheduled, and the plan for him was to get back up to Ohio State during the season for a game. If he is going to commit before the season, then that Ohio State visit doesn't even happen. So, I don't know, man. French seems to be on some games, or really has totally lost interest in Ohio State. I don't know what you can believe out of that guy, but we're not talking about him now. I just bring him up to say that I think that him doing what he's doing not only is pushing Heartline more towards Decorey Moore, but probably making it more appealing to Decorey Moore to consider Ohio State more seriously. And I got to tell you, I got a really good feeling about this one. And I think that the Bucks are trending. And again, just a gut feeling, reading the tea leaves and everything. I'm really happy about this. On the not so good front, Blake Woodby, cornerback, top 100 corner, been committed to the Bucks for a long time, but obviously been flirting with Oregon for about 4 weeks now, maybe a little longer. We all knew it was coming. He has decommitted, and he will most likely end up at Oregon. Who can blame the guy when you're the third cornerback in your class and kind of an afterthought, and somebody's coming after you hard, like Oregon's coming after him hard to, be the guy, just like they did with Jeremiah McClellan last year when he was the third wide receiver. Interestingly enough, the Oregon fans came into the Big Ten, and I was really digging them. I was really getting along with them. The USC fans had clicked up with the Michigan fans, and the Oregon ones seemed kind of like the reasonable ones. And we were having kind of a good time together, the Oregon fans and the Buckeye fans. They're getting a little big for their britches ever since Lanning spurned Alabama and has been running around with his blank checks all over the country. And they're getting a little cocky. They're popping into the comments here and saying things like, I can't wait to see Jeremiah McClellan play. That was just the other day. Like, it is really not owning Ohio State when you are telling them that, we took your third best wide receiver and now we're going to take your third best cornerback. I'm always puzzled when you've got a guy who is ranked that high, like Jeremiah McClellan was. He's a 5-star. And a guy like Blake Woodby, he's a top 100 player. And you're going into a class and, you're that third guy rather than going somewhere else and being that number one guy. Just to me, if I was in their situation, I'd go somewhere where I can be the number one guy if I'm that highly rated. So, I don't fault those guys at all for, pulling out and going somewhere else where they can be the star, the featured guy. So, but it's just not the own that Oregon thinks it is. Anyway, Oregon, definitely in for Decorey Moore. Texas definitely still in, but I got a good feeling about the Buckeyes and Decorey Moore. I just do. I think it's real. I think that the Buckeyes are going to end up with Decorey Moore. That's my gut feeling on that one, and I cannot wait for Heartline to pull yet another number one wide receiver. It's going to be amazing. And if they pull him, and if they pull David Sanders, two huge ifs, they will have with Devin Sanchez, David Sanders, Naeem Offord, Tavian St. Clair, and DeCorian Moore, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 ranked player in the country in the class. That's some kind of record. I don't know if anybody keeps that record, like who has the most the most players ranked in the top 6, but it's definitely a record. It's going to happen. I got faith in that happening, and maybe not so much in Sanders. I don't know, man. I'm still on the fence about that. We'll talk about offensive linemen in a little bit, but Michigan has, for the last 3 months or so, been pointing the finger at Ohio State about how we are attempting to purchase a national championship. And what was interesting is last year they had 9 transfer portal players come into their class. Ohio State had 9 transfer portal players last year. Then this year, we were sitting at 6 and they were sitting at 5. They just went on a crazy weekend where they have added 4 transfer portal players, 2 safeties and 2 cornerbacks. They got Jordan Mangum from Michigan State, Wesley Walker from, he was from Tennessee, then he transferred to Louisville, then he transferred to Michigan. And they got Amir Hall from an FCS program and Ricky Johnson from UNLV. Those are 2 cornerbacks. So their transfer portal total is now up to 9 players. Ohio State added Keenan Nelson Jr., guy from South Carolina. Well, he's from Pennsylvania. He went to St. Joe's in Philly. Jim Knowles, Marvin Harrison, Isaiah West, our guy. But he was down at South Carolina for 2 years. He started 4 games last year, played like 13 total over his 2 years down there. And he's going to be a really good depth piece. This guy was a top 200-ish player in the country coming out, 4-star. And he's 6'1", 200 pounds. He looks like a unit. I've watched a couple of tapes on him training. Looks pretty good, man. Looks pretty good. 3 years of eligibility left, that's the biggest key here. Absolutely love when you bring in a transfer that has 3 years of eligibility left and is willing to come in and sit and learn. And I think it's a great add. But that brings the Buckeyes up to 7 portal players brought in, the guys who are trying to buy the championship. Michigan now with 9. And the hypocrisy never ends with these people. It just never ends. I'm sure they will spin it now too, but you paid more, when they have absolutely no idea what was paid for any of these players, because the only people that know that information are the NIL collective and the player himself. And who shares that kind of information? Nobody. So anyway. So Ryan Day was on Bo Bishop's show in 97.1 The Fan this week. And I know some people might have garnered something from this, but I only find things on these shows that frustrate me when Ryan Day does them. So first, Bo Jackson asks him in the most tentative way, like he is asking a personal question about his marriage for a time frame. No, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to give me a date. I'd be disingenuous if I didn't ask a time frame on when he thinks he might name a starting quarterback, which is not a personal question at all.
It'd be disingenuous of me if I didn't put you on the spot with one. Do you have, and I'm not expecting you to give me the date, but do you have a time frame on naming a starter coach?
No.
Quarterback. I was going there. I had to go there. No. I mean, is there a date?
And asking for a time frame in itself is giving him an out already. Like a time frame could be, August. August is the time frame I'm going to name it. That could be anything. That's not a deadline. That's a time frame. And it's just ridiculous the way these guys treat him. But the way Ryan Day cannot answer a question anymore, I feel like he has programmed himself to spin questions so hard at this point that he is incapable, or he just really is enjoying this. It's like a big troll job for him. Like, I do this sometimes where I have these things where I might do a little something annoying with my family, and none of them find it funny, but I find it hysterical and I just kind of keep it to myself. I think that Ryan Day is doing that at this point when it comes to not being able to answer a question straight with these people because he just can't seem to do it. And let's listen in.
Kind of that you have.
I mean, it's going to be a huge part of our season. You know, is the quarterback playing, how well the quarterback plays. You know, I mean, we know that. We know how important the offensive line play is going to be. We know how important the quarterback play is going to be. We're not shying away from that. You know, and typically, you know, the defense is going to be strong, and how well they play late in the season is going to be critical. But it always comes down to the quarterback. You know, and so that's a big part of it. In terms of a deadline, I don't like to do that. You know, because, you know, this is something where a lot of those guys are working towards it, you know, and I want to make sure that, you know, we're doing what's right by them, but at the same time, do right by the team to make sure that we're prepared. You know, and I think, you know, the way that things turned out last year, you know, it kind of went into the first couple games of the season. That's not ideal. I wouldn't like to do that again this year. But it's going to come down to playing the best players. And I say that all the time. Like, we don't have time to not play the best players. So they'll be in competitive situations, and may the best man win.
If you ever truly want to unplug, we got about 400 acres that always.
How much more of a layup of a question is that? A time frame. And he immediately says he doesn't want to do deadline. Well, all right, he doesn't immediately say that. How much of a layup is that question? Like, seriously, that is such a layup question, a time frame. And he starts by talking about the offensive line and the defense. It's amazing, man. The ultimate spin doctor, Ryan Day. Anyway, what might be even more frustrating to me, you know what, that used to frustrate me. I'm starting to find it just comical at this point. But the frustrating thing to me is this one right here.
The notion of, look, it's 16 games. Like, I don't think anyone's ready for what's coming. Like, this is going to be nuts when we think about what's coming down the pipe. But you guys have made that really a part of the ethos of the program of, hey, we're going to need a lot of you guys. When did you guys kind of hit that as a touchdown? Was that in the offseason? Was there a point where you said, man, the old days are done. We aren't playing 12. Like, we're trying to play 16 games, 17. I mean, this is going to be a long season. And how did you get that message to players to the point where they could receive it?
I don't understand what's going on here. Bo Bishop, very bright guy, been following football a long time. I mean, is he just mistaken, or is he being disingenuous? It's not a 12 game season anymore. It's 16, 17. He knows darn well that Michigan played 15 games last year to win a national championship. He knows darn well that the regular season is still 12 games. He knows darn well that 15 to 16 is one extra game. He also knows that the top 4 seeds will definitely be the favorites to win the national championship, being that they have the easiest road and they're the 4 best teams, and they will play 16 games, which is one extra game. He knows all that. He might not know that because of the rule change with the clock, that there are 8 less plays a game, which equates to an entire game's worth of plays, which means as far as football plays, there's actually no more football for those teams playing 16 games. He might not know that, but just giving him the benefit of the doubt, he definitely knows that 15 to 16 is one extra game. So why is he saying we're not playing 12 anymore? We're playing 16, 17. I don't understand this. I'm hearing this from everybody everywhere we tune in about all this extra football. I'm no super bright guy, and I don't understand why nobody else is pointing this out. I have heard, by the way, my favorite journalist of all time, Doug Lesmerises, point this out as well. But he's the only other one that I've heard talking about this. Like, he said, you know, there's one extra game the way he does, which I just love. But yes, one extra game. I don't know, man. Is everybody trying to like bamboozle somebody? I don't know what's going on here. It's kind of mind blowing to me, but you know, it is what it is. I stumbled across an article the other day. So it goes as such. What schools are you hearing from right now about your recruitment? Right now, Purdue, SMU, and Houston. How often, if so, does Ohio State contact you, and what coach contacts you? I've actually never been contacted by them. The only time I talked to OSU was at their camp. How was that OSU camp? Your 40-yard dash time sure turned some heads. Yeah, the camp went well. I felt like I did everything I could to stand out. And yeah, I was surprised with the 40-yard time myself. Do you expect an offer from OSU? Yes, sir, I do. 4.27 seconds was the 40-yard dash time. The offer list swelled to Minnesota, Purdue, Northwestern, Missouri, Eastern Michigan, Houston. But the Ohio State offer never came. And now Antoine Winfield Jr. is the highest paid defensive back in the NFL, in NFL history. 4 years, $84 million. Antoine Winfield Sr. from my hometown of Akron, Ohio. Obviously, as much as he is an Ohio State legend, he's double that around here. You can still hear older dudes talk about the 75-pound Antoine Winfield playing Pee Wee football, bringing all 75 pounds every hit. Absolute legend. And playing football in the same city just a couple years behind him, one of my favorites ever. Top 3, right? Obviously, a Buckeye legend and an NFL legend as well. One of the weirdest things about the whole story with Antoine Winfield Jr. is everybody missed on Antoine Winfield Jr. Everybody. We're talking about the son of an NFL legend, right? And this dude, when we see guys come out now, coming out of high school, going into college, we consistently talk about pedigree. We talk about guys with parents who were athletes. Dorian Brew's mom, obviously guys that had a dad that played in the NFL, like Talon Taylor, just in this cycle. And anytime somebody has a relative that played professional sports, they get this big bump in recruiting. We talk about it every year. Somehow this skipped over Antoine Winfield Jr. And the only thing I can think of is his height, but his dad was the same size. We're talking about a guy that ran 4.27 at Ohio State's camp. It's unbelievable what a colossal miss this was by everybody. The schools that offer him are schools that consist of mid 3-star prospects. Antoine Jr. was not a mid 3-star prospect. He was a low 3-star prospect. He was a borderline 2-star prospect. There are 32 5-stars in a class, roughly 300 4-stars, about 1,000 3-stars. And I always point out when I'm talking about recruits, the national rank, because Carter Lowe is a 4-star, but he's the 34th ranked player in the country. The 315th ranked player in the class is also a 4-star, but that is a massively different prospect from the Carter Lowes of the world. So I always toss in that number. For context, in Antoine Winfield Jr.'s class, the top-rated 3-star was number 350 in the country. Antoine Winfield Jr. was number 1,392. Massively different level of prospect there. Massively different. That's a low-rated 3-star for a mid-tier Big Ten team. In fact, he ranked 136th in the cornerback position rank, and that was the lowest position rank of any guy on Minnesota's team in that class. So we're talking about the lowest rated guy for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. It's just insane. With speed like that, playing Texas football, that's where he played football. I don't get it. It will always be such a massive mystery to me. But gosh, did we just screw up, man. What a screw up. To be honest, the Buckeyes do really good with legacies. Unless I'm missing somebody, I'm counting 6 legacies right now on the Ohio State roster. And I'm going to guess at least somebody here does not know that Orlando Pace has a son on the team, and another one who is a recruit ranked 840th in the class, but has an Ohio State offer, which is awesome. I love that. He's a tight end wide receiver, Landon Pace, big kid, not so fast, but very effective, playing in St. Louis, listed as an athlete, as a college prospect, and he's got an offer. The legacy list as it currently stands is third generation Zach Herbstreit, Lorenzo and Sonny Styles, Patrick Gerd, Jalen Pace, and Will Smith Jr. I think 3 of those guys are walk-ons. I mean, that's a pretty impressive number to have 6 guys who are legacies playing on your team. I'd like to see how that compares to some other schools. My guess is it's way up there. But it's just like, man, what could have been? What could have been? But congratulations to Antoine Jr., who's always going to feel like kind of a cousin to the Buckeye program to me. And even though the leadership at the time really screwed up, everybody did. It sucks, but everybody did. But if you saw him come into your camp and run a 4.27, I don't know. That's kind of inexcusable to me. And the worst part about it is that class was full of crappy DBs. Like, you had 1 stud and 3 guys who wouldn't sniff an offer from Ohio State today. They wouldn't sniff it. So, we're talking guys ranked in the 6, 7, 800s. Why can't you take a flyer on a legacy like Antoine Winfield's son, who runs a 4.27 at your own camp? Not some mythical number. That's what you clocked him at. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. It sucks. But congrats to Twan Jr. Love it. Absolutely awesome story for him. It's really awesome. I've never heard him talk about the situation with Ohio State. I would like to hear him talk. You can clearly tell from that interview I just read, he absolutely wanted that offer. And that hurts. That hurts bad. I got a question on Thursday about Trey McNutt. Not long after I answered that question, I was watching the Bucknuts Morning 5, and this popped up.
Ask you about Trey McNutt. You kind of helped me out there by getting ahead of it. Very interesting kind of recruitment here. If you were to read his stuff or read what he says, I don't think you get the sense that he's an alum, an alum, or what would you say? His folks are alum, and legacy. He's an Ohio guy. It just doesn't feel legacy. Excuse me. It doesn't really feel that way with him. I don't know if that's the recruitment not getting off to the start it should have or needed to, but it just seems like he's a little reticent. Am I misreading that?
Now, I won't make you sit through the answer because there really wasn't an answer at all. Bill Kurlick is a guy that I just absolutely adore. I mean, just such a nice guy. And being such a nice guy, he does not like to. So the question that Ruben asked him, it's true. Ruben's right. But Kurlick wasn't going to confirm that. So he went on about, the situation and what Trey's going to do. And, it's the truth. It's the truth. And I've been saying it for 2 months now. Trey's recruitment and demeanor does not feel like it usually feels from a player in those circumstances, right?
I'm not sure I'm not sure how I feel about this one, Bill. I don't know how it's going to end up, but I don't know. It just is a little weird to me, but I digress.
And every time I say it or bring it up, somebody inevitably puts in the comments, or multiple people, that what am I worried about? He's a legacy. And I don't ever say that in the show. And the reason I don't say it is because I was asked not to say it. And so I don't. They don't want that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want this to be all Trey's decision, and they don't want that to be part of it. It's just that simple. So that part of it is not something that is helping Ohio State in this particular recruitment. It's just not. Nor is the fact that his mom is an alum. That's not helping at all. So I honestly don't know if being from Ohio is helping in this situation. I have viewed Trey as someone who is a national recruit. We don't have a leg up on that. He came into this, everybody's even Steven. That's the way it's always felt to me. Everybody's even Steven, starting from scratch, and they're going to all work for it just as hard. That's what my vibe has always been. And, I feel probably even more like that now. So Dan Rubin was right to feel that way. Absolutely right. But I've seen Trey get some negative comments because he is going to be announcing his visits one at a time instead of announcing them all at once. And I see this as kind of a savvy business move that if I was an agent, I would be recommending. The truth is that N in NIL stands for name. And the more people know your name, the more followers you have on social media, the more you are worth when you sit down with that car dealership and make that deal. Well, if I release all 5 visits in one day, I'm in the news cycle for a day on all the shows, in all the print publications. If I wait till 3 days before each visit, then I'm in the news cycle for as many visits as I have for an extra, 5 days? It's pretty simple. The more they can get their name out there, the more their name's worth, the more recognition they have. Who recognizes your name? How many followers do you have on Twitter and Instagram? It matters. So it's a pretty savvy business move. And Trey's a savvy businessman for a young dude. He's got a slogan, and he's got his slogan on merchandise that he sells as a high school dude, So I don't think this is diva-like behavior. If you've ever heard him talk, he's far from a diva. Jordan Seaton, I think that kid's a diva. I think everything he did was very diva-like, and he wanted attention. McNutt just seems savvy to me. But honestly, guys, this brings me to another point here, and it's something that I'm going to have to start accepting, I think, that really hurts my feelings, and it's something I've never wanted to accept. One of the reasons I love college football so much is it's very tribal in that it's our guys, our kids that we bring up playing at Ohio State. And if we go play Texas, it's Ohio kids versus Texas kids. It's not like that in professional sports. And since NIL, a lot of walls have been broken down. And let's just pretend, I don't want to, but let's pretend, never mind. Let's not pretend that. Let's just say this. Last year, we lost Jordan Marshall to Michigan. This year, we've lost Marquise Davis to Kentucky. Justin Hill, Trey McNutt, they're in play with Oregon and some other schools. Bo Jackson, obviously, been trending a lot to Georgia lately. We heard Steve Wiltfong say Georgia leads. And we are in a new era here. We've always heard about how hard it is to pull guys out of the Deep South. It has been just as hard for anybody to pull elite players out of Ohio. We've lost a handful in the last 10 years. Not even the last 20 years, just a handful of guys. And we can all remember them. Great players from Ohio that ended up going somewhere else besides Ohio State. And now we're talking about 4 great players in one cycle that, in previous years, they'd have been locked down by now. At least 3 of them. I mean, this is something. This is a new era we're living in here. And I've got to get used to it because, coming into this cycle, Marquise Davis and Bo Jackson, 2 excellent running backs from Northeast Ohio. All I wanted were those 2. Like, I didn't care about a Jordan Davison or anybody else. Keep us those 2 great local guys. Keep them home, and let's ride. And to be on the cusp of potentially losing both of them, to someone like me who, admittedly, I know I'm one of these guys, and some people disagree with me, who really wants a lot of Ohio guys. I get it. That's not for everybody. I know some people don't really care. But I find it very bothersome and I hate it. But I just need to rewire my brain because this is the way this thing is going now. But at the same time, it's now become easier for Ohio State to pull from other places that it wasn't before. We look at the Alabama kids. We look at how the Georgia thing is just on the regular now. How the Texas thing is just, it's just like any other guy anymore. That used to be a big deal. It's not anymore. So things are changing in that direction for us coming up this way too. California, modern day, if we get Jordan Davison, you know, so they're coming in easier and they're leaving easier. And that's just the way it's gone since NIL. We look at a school like Oregon, who in the past, the distance from Ohio or the South to Oregon was a non-starter for a lot of kids. They could pull from California. They could pull from Texas and Arizona. That was it. That was the extent of their reach. In the NIL era, those walls are being broken down and the country has shrunk, and all of these guys have become national guys. So the in-state stuff that we used to rely on, and when people talk about, like, you can't lose a Trey McNutt. Well, this is just the way of the world now, man. In college football, like, we need to accept that this is going to start happening more and more. I hate it. I want to make sure that the Buckeyes, whoever's running the program, is prioritizing our in-state guys more than anybody else. But, it is time to kind of accept that as long as NIL is structured like this, we're going to see a whole heck of a lot more of good players from Ohio going elsewhere. But at the same time, we're also going to see the same caliber of player be easier to bring in from somewhere else. I'd rather it wasn't like that, but it just is. And, something we all got to get used to, I think. I could be wrong, but that's the way it seems to me. And that's why, when we look at these recruits who are waiting till really late in the process to declare, or the guys who are committed to a school and still taking visits. Now, TJ Alford, he had his visits scheduled to other places before he committed to Ohio State, cleared that with Ohio State, and cleared it with all the other schools. Just a class thing to do. I have a ton of respect for him. So the fact that he's doing that means absolutely nothing to me, and I am not nervous about him at all. I think he is 100% locked in, and there's no nerves about that at all. But when we look at these other guys who are committing to a school, and then after they commit to a school, they're scheduling visits elsewhere. I don't understand why this has become a trend, other than the we know that you're getting paid for visits now in some cases. If that's the case, why commit? Like, I just don't get it. But it makes you appreciate guys like Atavian St. Clair more, an in-state guy who commits to the Buckeyes and wants nothing to do with anybody else. And to it, maybe even a further degree, a guy like Devin Sanchez, who's from out of state and rated as high as he is, who commits and then that's it, all in, shut it down, leave me alone. Like, it makes you appreciate those guys more. And, that's pretty cool. So there's give and take with everything. And I'm just going to try to look at the positives in this because, just as few as 3 years ago, if you were to tell me we're going to have two amazing running backs in the state of Ohio and we might lose them both, there might be holes in the wall. Like, this is just the way of the world now, man. This is just, things are different, and they're moving fast, and I got to move with them. So, not the way I want it, but I don't get to pick. I was listening to a debate last week about special teams, more specifically, who should return kicks for the Buckeyes. And it just got me all fired up about Ryan Day's tenure and how he has kind of punted, pardon the pun, on special teams altogether. I kind of feel like he is the type of guy who would totally get rid of special teams in the game if he could. And I find that really bothersome. I was listening to a debate the other day about special teams, more specifically, who should return kicks for the Buckeyes. And it just got me fired up again about something that's bothered me for a long time in the Ryan Day tenure. And that is that he is the type of guy, I think, that if he could just totally get rid of special teams from the game, he would. And I'm no huge special teams lover. But special teams, we've seen effective special teams win games, flip fields, change momentum. And he's just punted on it his whole career. Like he just doesn't want anything to do with it. And it bothers me. And I give him a lot of praise when he deserves it. I think he deserves some criticism here. And my hope is that this is something that he is going to change. And the bubble wrap approach with players, putting a backup wide receiver back to return kicks is another thing that's bothered me. And that's a trend in college football. The spring game that bothered a lot of people, I was all for it. I'm okay with it. That's not a game. But when you're playing a football game, it wasn't that long ago that we used to see guys who won the Heisman Trophy returning kicks. The best player on the team, the best athlete on the team, returned kicks. And now we stick some fifth string wide receiver to return kicks. And it's so irritating to me. I want the best guy. I want the dog, the guy that we can trust, the smartest guy. I want that guy returning kicks. That guy just happens to probably be Caleb Downs on this team. Why are we putting guys in bubble wrap? These are football players playing a football game. I don't think that there is a bigger risk of injury from Caleb Downs returning kicks or playing safety. So if he plays 5 more plays a game, I don't see a problem with it. Travis Hunter plays 112 plays a game. Like, why not? I want the best guy to return kicks. I want to embrace special teams. There is nothing that can change a game, a big game, like a huge special teams play. And we need every advantage we can get. So my hope is that this is something that we see change this year. Now, I seriously doubt it because we keep hearing about Lorenzo Styles potentially returning kicks. Don't get me wrong. I love Lorenzo Styles. I want to see Lorenzo Styles have a role. But more than I want that, I want to see the best player on the team, who I think is probably Caleb Downs, who is an experienced return man. I want to see him with the ball in his hands. Also, one of the smartest, highest IQ guys on the team, who we know won't make a stupid mistake. We've seen a whole lot of that too. So, not surprisingly, there are some people who disagree with this. I'll call them the bubble wrappers, and I'm sure I'll talk to some of you after saying this. And there has been times in my football fandom where I've kind of agreed with that. I remember being younger. I'm a Browns fan, and losing Kellen Winslow on a special teams play and just being furious about the fact that he was in there on special teams. But I've kind of changed my stance on that. If you're going to get injured on the football field, you're going to get injured on the football field. Sometimes it's this play or that play, and every time it's usually fluky. We don't see any more injuries on special teams percentage-wise than we do in the normal field of play. That's a fact. So, it's just it's something that I hope the Bucs embrace this year. I would really love to see the embracing of a dog mentality on special teams. Quit putting in backups, put in good players. This is something that I really loved about Urban Meyer. I really loved the way that he embraced special teams. Frank Beamer made a career on special teams. It's a part of the game that we're seeing just kind of get relegated into total obsolescence, and it's just annoying to me, particularly when you have athletes that can really make a difference in a game on special teams. So that's that about that. All right, on to some recruiting updates. The Buckeyes have offered 2 more linemen. Not him. That's our transfer. Caden Strayhorn out of IMG, 3-star, 426 prospect in the country. He'll be taking visits to Michigan and Ohio State and some more. He just doesn't have them planned yet. And they also offered Zaire Addison, big offensive tackle out of Florida, 4-star, number 211 in the country. He has visits to Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Penn State, Oregon already planned. He's going to talk to his family about getting up to Ohio State. And he said, it's Ohio State. It's one of the best in the country. Definitely wants to get up there. Alex Geitman of Letterman Row writes, if the Buckeyes want to get in on this, they're coming a little late to the party. They're going to have to work really hard or something like that. The kid wants to make his decision in August. And, you know, I've taken a little heat recently for my criticism of Justin Frye. And I'll admit, I've been quite critical. I think for valid reasons. I don't like to criticize Ohio State football, like anything about it. It's not something I take joy in. But I point it out when I think that criticism is valid. And I think that criticism is valid here. And I also think that the fact that Ohio State football fans put so much criticism onto Ohio State and call out mistakes is one of the reasons that Ohio State has never been bad. We're a unique fan base in that sense that most fan bases just, you know, they stick up for their program no matter what. We don't. We call out the nonsense, and I think it's effective. We're a very loud, brash bunch, and it works. So I criticize Justin Frye for offering half the amount of linemen that Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia have. I questioned if that was an intentional strategy or not. You know, miss, drop down, miss, drop down, miss, drop down. But then we talk about next year in the class of 2026, and the offers, the top 10 linemen in the country have 8 out of 10 of them have offers from Alabama and Georgia, and only 2 of those guys have offers from Ohio State. It's just like, I don't understand the strategy here. I really don't. And he is recruiting behind all of his peers on the staff. So when you got a blueprint laid out, right, and you can say that there is a blueprint laid out by Alabama and Georgia when it comes to offensive line play, like one of two things is happening here. Either he's just being lazy or he thinks he has a better way to do it. Either way, I disagree, right? All right, so then an impeccable source, Jeremy Birmingham, tells us that this was, in fact, a strategy, that he was casting a smaller number, a smaller net, because he feels he can build deeper connections and relationships and that it will pay off in the end. All right, so then I criticize that strategy. All right, so as luck would have it, I've got an answer to my question. Last night on Talking Stuff, that's Jeremy Birmingham's show, he brought this up and said that he had a poster at Rivals who was asking him this question. So he went and asked around Ohio State. And the answer is, it's an intentional strategy. Frye is outsmarting Georgia, Bama, and Michigan. They feel like if you cast a narrow net, you're going to have a tighter bond with the kids, and they're going to feel more prioritized and more special. So Frye intentionally casted this small net. But there's a problem with this strategy, and that is when you miss out, you have very few places to pivot. You end up scrambling because if it works, it can have a big payoff. But if it doesn't, it has a potentially disastrous downside. And I don't think that this offensive line is in the position to gamble like that. So now Frye's actions in the last week and a half, handing out the most offers I've ever seen on the offensive line in a 10-day period this late in the cycle. I mean, every day I'm on here talking about 2 new offensive line offers for the last 5 shows. And it wasn't just him with those offers. Chip went and saw Jackson Lloyd out in California. Carlos Loughlin went and saw Henry Finucco in Texas. He went and saw Mario Nash in Mississippi. Sam Petito handed out one of the offers. Loughlin handed Frye the phone to give one of the offers out. We're seeing a mad scramble, like an all hands on deck offensive line mad scramble. Are you guys seeing the same thing? Like, that's what I'm seeing. And then today I see an article written by a Buckeye writer. And in this article, he says, quote, I was recently asked about Ohio State casting a small net when it comes to offensive line recruiting and concentrating on a small group of recruits at that position. But that's anything but the case. And then he goes on to tell us his evidence here by listing 12 prospects in this article. Among those 12 prospects, he lists Mario Nash, Henry Finucco, Zaire Addison, Andrew Stargell, Jackson Lloyd, and Caden Strayhorn. Those 6 guys were all offered in the last week. All of them. A week and a half in Stargell's case. So 2 weeks. So his evidence that he wasn't casting a small net was to list 12 total prospects, 6 of whom are only 2 weeks old. And he watched this scramble the same as we all did. And he comes out with this response. That question, by the way, was 2 weeks ago. So, very valid question at the time. This is just mind-blowing to me, right? This is clearly an all-hands-on-deck scramble. My criticism of Justin Frye's strategy was 100% accurate, because even if this turns out good, and I actually do think it's going to, because there's a lot of really good momentum, he pivoted off his strategy. Like, he said, okay, forget the strategy, all hands on deck. We need to offer a bunch of guys now, right? So the criticism of the strategy was fair. It didn't work. Now, all's well that ends well, right? Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, in a certain sense. But if you and I are working in an office and I am behind on my work, and you and 2 more coworkers stop what you're doing to come help me handle my business, everything on your desk isn't getting done. So while everybody on the staff is running around helping Justin Frye right now to make sure the offensive line class isn't a disaster, whatever they were going to be doing otherwise is not getting done. So yes, in a sense, all's well that ends well, but other things are suffering while everybody else is trying to help him here. That's the way I look at it. I don't want Justin Frye to fail. I want him to be awesome. The better he is, the better our program is. But, I think he rolled the dice on a really goofy strategy, and, it just may work out in the end, but it's not going to be because of that goofy strategy. So yes, the criticism was 100% warranted. I stand by it. I own things when I'm wrong. I wasn't wrong here. I guess my bigger question is, why isn't anybody else talking about this, right? Like, this is kind of a big deal. I'm hearing everybody else talk about, on the shows we all watch, the mad that dash of offers, but I'm not hearing anybody point out the reason why that is. And, I find that kind of disingenuous, because they all know why. They all know. Why aren't they saying it to everybody? It's something that really bothers me. I mean, when you cover a team or when you cover a politician, your relationship by nature is supposed to be adversarial on behalf of the public. That's what they teach in journalism school. Unfortunately, we don't have that at Ohio State. We just don't. A couple of them, Dylan Davis, a guy who works for a newspaper, Doug Lamarisse, a former newspaper guy. The guys with that background, they generally have that. They do. But now we got so many people who cover the team who have gone into business for themselves, or they work for a place who now is just 100% dedicated to Ohio State football. Access brings good content. And if your subject is Ohio State football, when you portray them in a positive light, there's a whole lot of access that comes. And it's just kind of a conflict of interest, I think. So between a bit of the press that covers Ohio State football and the Ohio State football program, there's kind of a lot of synergy. So a perfect example of what I'm talking about would be Tony Alford and the clear laziness that he was exhibiting, and that Ryan Day went and prodded him for a couple of years to kind of change his ways with recruiting, that nobody told us about until literally the day after Tony was gone. And then we heard that. And it's just like, if Justin Frye was fired tomorrow, I think all of a sudden we might hear about his disastrous recruiting strategy. I don't know. Just a hunch. It is pretty amazing what Akron Hoban has turned into. They were not a powerhouse in the city up until about 10 years ago. They are my rival school, so it's been difficult to watch. But at the same time, I'm proud that it's a school from Akron who's now kind of competing for the school that's producing the most talent in the state. So that's pretty cool. But they had Jim Knowles, James Laurinaitis, Justin Frye, and Tim Walton all at the high school this past week, which is pretty incredible to get 4 Ohio State coaches at your school. And they went and saw Eli Lee, 2025 linebacker commit. They also saw top 10 overall cornerback Albert Rock Hill and offensive lineman Sam Greer. That's 6'8", awesome lineman that plays center for the basketball team. Moves very great, very nimble for a guy that size. And he is a top 100 overall. Also a ton of 2026 and 2027 prospects on that team. They're just loaded, absolutely loaded. And the more loaded you get, the more come. So really awesome stuff going on over at Hoban. I saw our buddy London Merritt the other day. And London is looking bigger, like way bigger. He's been down at IMG working out hard. I asked him if he's gained some weight. He's not gained any weight. He said he's lost fat and gained muscle, weighs the same. I also asked him because I wanted to, where is this picture here? Oh, did I not load it up? Come on. Oh, right here. All right. So check it out. All right. So this dude is the linebacker. This is Joke's brother who plays for the Browns. And I am having a hard time with this name. So now that he is a teammate of London's and London said he's helping recruit him, I asked him what this dude's nickname and what do they call him? They call him Woo. All right. So from now on, it's not Noke, which I was going to call him. We're calling this dude Woo. And I heard Tom Loy say that Woo, though he didn't call him Woo, I'm calling him Woo because London told me that's what they call him. Woo is most likely, he's down to Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and USC. He thinks he's definitely going to stay in the Midwest. And I think that means what I originally thought, that it's going to come down to Ohio State and Notre Dame. Of course, his older brother went to Notre Dame, so they're probably going to have the leg up. And Marcus Freeman, when this class started, it looked like he was just loading up recruits, just trying to get numbers up. He's doing a really good job. He's doing a very, very good job. He's a really good recruiter. I don't know how great of a coach he's going to be, but he's a good recruiter. And hats off to him. He's pulling some serious players. He really is. So going back and looking in the last 10 years has been a lot of fun this offseason for me. The 14 playoff era being a perfect 10 years makes for a really great snapshot for an interesting period in college football. And the last decade in college football, it was kind of the last period before everything got flipped on its head. We've got so many changes that have happened and so many more that are coming. The sport's been rooted in old tradition and not changing, and it's just been totally flipped on its head. So being able to look back at this snapshot from 2014 to 2024, 10 years from now, when we look back at it, it's going to look like an entirely different sport. But you can always count on the Ohio State Buckeyes being at the top of the sport. Anyway, today's nugget I got for you surprised the heck out of me on several fronts. So we're going to go over some teams here. And what we got here is teams with winning records against ranked teams over the past 10 years. Ones of note. So there are 10 teams, just 10, that have winning records against ranked teams. And that's Alabama at 80% win rate, Ohio State at a 77% win rate, Clemson at a 72%. So you got Ohio State and Bama right next to each other with 80 and 77. Big drop off to Clemson at 72. Then Georgia at 69% and Oklahoma at 62%. So that's your top 5. Then you go to LSU, who was 26 and 22, just above 500. That's number 6. Oklahoma State, 25 and 21. That's impressive for Mike Gundy's crew. Oregon, just over 500 at 23 and 21, followed by TCU at 21 and 19, and Washington at 21 and 18. If you look at it by conference, The last 10 years, conference members before realignment, the SEC had 3 teams. The Big Ten had 1. The Big 12 had 3. The Pac-12 had 2, and the ACC had 1. So the Big 12 had as many schools, 3, that had a winning record against ranked teams in the last 10 years than the SEC. If you go by the new conference members, the SEC had 4, Big 12 3, ACC 1, and the Big 12 2. Ohio State being just 3 points behind Alabama, I'm positive, would shock a whole lot of people who think Ohio State just shrivels up and dies against any ranked opponent. Clemson, Georgia, and Oklahoma making the top 5. Alabama obviously in a class by itself. Ohio State with just 1 national title in this period. Georgia, Clemson with 2, Oklahoma with none, and Alabama with 100. The difference between Georgia and Ohio State, it's pretty close, man. We're just a couple plays and a kick away from that being reversed, and Ohio State having 2 and Georgia having 1. How about some of the negative surprise on the list? Michigan's hero, Jim Harbaugh, there for 9 years of the 10-year period, not able to get the mighty Michigan program to a winning record over ranked teams, 20 and 23. How about Florida, Florida State, and Miami? 13 and 30, 12 and 24, and 10 and 20. I don't understand how these guys still pull recruits. Texas, 19 and 29. Notre Dame with a losing record. That's not surprising at 23 and 24. Penn State, a disgusting 13 and 25. Wisconsin, better than Penn State, 16 and 23. And the new hot shots of the Big Ten, USC, coming in at 17 and 28 against the top 25 in the last decade.
3 types of players in the portal. I mean, it's really pretty simple. Most of the guys in the portal aren't good enough to play for us.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. I mean, we have guys that are backups at Clemson that go in the portal because they just want to have an opportunity. And most of them are graduates, by the way. But we have guys that are backups, or they want a chance to go play, and I got no problem with that. And so rarely do we have a starter leave Clemson. You've got the majority of the guys. They're guys that are in the portal because they want to have a chance to go start somewhere. Mm-hmm. They're not playing where they are. They're not good enough to come in and play for us. And so we'd rather take a good high school player as long as we can get them. Which we do, and you develop them. That's the first type. The second type of guy that goes in the portal is he's only going in the portal as a formality because the deal's already been done. Mm-hmm. He knows where he's going before he ever goes in the portal. So we're not getting that guy. Mm-hmm. And then the third type of guy is going in the portal just to see what he can get. And we're never going to win that war. So there's
This guy is so obnoxious, man. But he's right. He's absolutely right about players 1, 2, and 3. Totally spot on. Players 1, 2, and 3 exist. They're real. But there's 2 other categories of player. Category number 4, that is the Caleb Downs, the Evan Stewart, the Julian Sayin, the guys who absolutely could play for Clemson. But Clemson can't afford because they are a small university with a small donor pool. And rather than go after them, and that be publicly known that he's going after them and lose the battle, embarrassing him, and he's a narcissist, he would rather not go after them. And that's fine. He doesn't need to. But it's player number 5 that is the most vital player in the transfer portal. Player number 5 is one that a narcissist would never take on, because player number 5 admits that you screwed up somewhere in player development or recruiting. Player number 5 is your Will Kazmarek, your Seth McLaughlin, the guy who's not entering the transfer portal to get the biggest deal, the guy who's not the guy they can't afford. He's the guy that goes into the transfer portal and he can make your team better in an area that you missed in recruiting or development. He's not a superstar, but he can potentially be an upgrade. And Dabo would rather let his program burn to the ground than admit he screwed up there. And that's why I respect Ryan Day so much here in this transfer portal. Because I said at the time, when he took on Will Howard, he was in a way admitting that there is a glitch, a hiccup in his quarterback room. And it was not just because Kyle McCord left. There was a little bit of a talent glitch. He was not 100% comfortable with McCord and Devin Brown going into the season this year. If McCord stayed, he was still going after a transfer portal quarterback in my estimation. And it put a little egg on his face. But he's not a narcissist that has a huge issue with that. He's okay with that if it makes his team better. Dabo Swinney is not. He'd rather burn it all to the ground than admit he's screwed up in anything. And that's why this dude's so pathetic. I cannot wait to watch how this turns out for him. Because the truth is, if you don't take, so if the Buckeyes, let's just say, for instance, they don't bring in Caleb Downs, they don't bring in Julian Sayin, they don't bring in Will Howard, they don't bring in any of these guys. You got Devin Brown starting at quarterback. You still got a great defense. You don't need Quinshawn. Your tight end room is still shaky, even with Will Kazmarek. It's not like Seth McLaughlin just immediately made the offensive line great. If they don't bring in any of those guys, they're still okay. The problem is you need to bring in guys because you're losing guys. And Clemson has lost, I think they lost 12 guys. So they lose 12. Unless they're bringing in classes of 35 guys every year, and they're not, you're going to run out of bodies. This guy is just so obnoxious, man. He's so obnoxious. And I've seen some people come out recently and talk about how, he knows exactly what he's doing. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that he quite understands this, because the math isn't adding up. If you're not bringing in portal players and you're not signing 35-man classes, but you're losing 12 guys a year, by the way, he's lost 12 the last 2 years, then what are you doing? Are you just bringing walk-ons up? Like, what are you doing? Like, at some point, we're going to have a catastrophe here. We're running out of players. So I can't wait to see what the strategy is next year. He said he went through camp with 125 players, finished with 123. That's a whole lot of walk-ons, but, what are we doing about the 12 transfers that are leaving? Where are we pulling them up from? This guy is going to run himself out of Clemson. I have no doubt about it. And how fast this guy fell from one of the best coaches in the game to the last 3 years, we've seen the steady decline. And it's been pretty apparent that he cannot win without a great quarterback. I just see this continuing to go downhill for him. And it's a shame. I actually really respected Dabo. I liked the way that he took a program that was just an average program and turned it into a behemoth that went head-to-head against Nick Saban and took him down 2 out of 4 times in national championships. That shouldn't have happened. That was a cool story. He was a likable guy at first. And you just kind of watched his ego slowly get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now he's not anywhere near that original guy when he first took over that job. He was humble. He was likable. He's none of those things to me anymore. He really isn't. And it's a shame. It really is, because I enjoyed him. I know a lot of Ohio State fans hated him. By the time Ohio State got around to playing Dabo, he was at that point starting to really wear on me. But the first few 3-4 years at Clemson, someone I really liked. What he did was absolutely fantastic. He said, we don't have to be this, we can be this. And he did it. And that's cool. I love that in college football. But what he is now, man, it's not even the same guy. It's not even. So, he'll be coaching at Georgia Southern soon, playing crosstown or cross-conference rival UAB, coached by Sharon Moore in 4 years or something. And, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He needs his comeuppance. He really does. He needs to be grounded again. and he'll give some big speech about it in 10 years about how his screw up grounded him and made him a better man. He'll preach it at church on the pulpit or something. Anyway, all right, guys, that's my show. It's now like I don't know, 2:15, and we are going to hit the sack. I appreciate you guys. Please like and subscribe to the show. Listen to it in podcast, and I will catch you guys this week on Tuesday, Thursday, and then the weekend show. And that's going to be the format going forward for, I don't know, the next month and a half or so. All right. Thanks, fellas. Talk to you soon. Chuck on Bucks out. It's crazy to me.